Hello and welcome to this web development course. In this lesson, I'm going to be taking you through some basic rudiments that you should know before we head into the main practical. The truth is that web development basically help move businesses forward and is a critical element in any digital marketing campaign because your website lies at the heart of all your online marketing. So if you do paid ads, social media, email campaigns, you have to generally create a funnel that ultimately leads users back to your website basically tells about you and whatever it is that you're putting out there. It also helps control and manage whatever campaign you're putting out there. Developing your website involves creating and optimizing your website and making it one of the most vital parts of your marketing. So web development should not be an afterthought. It actually should be a top priority. If I want to work with any organization or anyone, especially on digital marketing effort, my first question is always, do you have a website? Do you have a website? Now, moving forward, we have to ask us, what is web development? What actually goes into the process of designing a website? And that's what we're going to be looking at in this lesson in a few moments. Web development basically is all the process of creating websites on the internet. So usually when we say web development, is kind of a broad term, and it's inclusive of you creating a single website page, maybe from weeks or something, or painstakingly developing massive websites with thousands of original pages. So whether it's a one page or thousands of pages, both of them we count as web development. Now, you must have heard the word web design and you might be wondering, what does it mean? Is it different from web development? The two have similar meanings, and people tend to use web development to refer to, they feel if you're saying web development, it means that, oh, you're talking about coding and, technical things. And if you say web design, you're talking about just visual or surface level feature. Doesn't necessarily mean both of them are the same, actually, to me, whether web development or web design. You can still say, okay, I'm developing from scratch, and design is more of maybe I'm just customizing, but whichever one it works. Now, before we dive into the steps of the web development process, there are some components of web development that contribute to the website that you must know. We have to look at what it means to build a website. Then we'll now look at the other aspects of the website. And in looking at what it means to build a website, I want to take you through some terminologies that are very key or critical to building a website. Now, before we dive into that, you need to understand that a website is a file. It's actually a file stored on a server, and it contains multiple websites. So, a file stored on a server, but that server can contain many websites, that's many files. And these servers are connected through the internet. So, when you visit a website, you visit it using a browser. You go to your browser and you put in the web address to visit the website. A program is designed to load and display websites on your screen from the servers. If you're taking this course through the Tech Up Girls, or you had read the write up just before or after this, you will see how I explain how the internet works. So that's basically how website works. And you may also hear some people call browsers, refer to browsers as clients. So it's very important that you understand how the website works, or how the www or the World Web or the World Wide Web works, to actually understand web development. So read the write up just after or below this video, just before or after this video, to get a better understanding. Now, the first key terminology I need you to understand is the difference between hard coding and CMS. When we say CMS, we're talking about content management system. When developing a website, you have two primary options for how to do it. You can either code from scratch or you use a website builder. Now, when you code from scratch, you develop the entire website from ground up. But if you opt to use a website builder like Wix or something, you use what we call a content management system. to create it from a pre-existing model. So basically, a content management system gives you the basic building blocks of the website and lets you put them together without having to know in-depth coding. You don't have to write any line of code. So it basically handles the coding for you in advance so that you can just arrange the surface level and customize it to what you want. Now, while using a content management system is very helpful, if you don't know anything about coding, hand coding gives you the opportunity to create a more customized website for your business, because you're going to find out that when you start using content management system, there are some edits that might not be able that you cannot do at a superficial level. There's some basic knowledge of coding like HTML or CSS will help you achieve the level of customization that you want. Another terminology you need to understand is the front end and the back end development. When you build a website, it's more like designing a house. On one hand, you want to look at the painting the walls, like installing the tops, laying the carpet, and all of that. But before you do all of those things, you need to lay out the pipes. You need to put in the feet, the the foundation. You need to enable stuff that will allow these utilities to work. So it's more like you build the house, you put the foundation, you put the structure, the walls. If there are no walls, how will you paint? Right? If there are no spaces for windows, how do you put windows? If there are no pipes, how do you put the sink? So similarly, that's how a website usually functions in two levels: the front end and the back end. So basically, the front end is talking about the surface level things, like the things that you can see, the color, the heading, and all of that. But the back end is where you lay out all the behind the scenes, the technical element of your website. So if your site features like image gallery, for example, you must store the image file somewhere at the back end for people to be able to see it in the front end. And where you set up this storage, this image is where we call the storage space, right? So when you implement both the front end and the back end development on your website, that's if you can implement both, those are the people we refer to as full stack developers. So when you hear full stack development and full stack developer, it means they can implement both front end and back end. Most people can do only front end. Some people are only very proficient in back end. Not everybody. If you don't really have an eye for design, you might not be able to create a beautiful front end website. Moving forward, I need us to understand what I call the web development process. So, when you're ready to develop a website, you want to follow a particular series of steps to ensure optimal results. And I'm going to take you through 6-step descriptions of the process. So, there are 6 steps of this process that I want to take you through. The first and most important thing is to develop a plan. When I teach students, especially when it comes to design or development, I always emphasize that it's very important that you start with the end in mind. The first thing you should do before you develop a website is to lay out a plan. Don't just start, I'll just go and put WordPress, create the homepage, take this, do that. No, you have to take time to figure out what you want for the site. And the best way to do this is to list specific goals. You have to know what goal you want to achieve from the site. Is it going to be an e-commerce site that allows people to buy things online? Or is it just going to be a portfolio site that just details about you? Or what do you want? Or do you want something that familiarizes people with your team? Or is it going to be a marketplace? Is it going to be a membership site? You need to know that, right? Then you have to also consider who you're trying to reach with your website. Who do you want to visit the site? What would they want to find? Because if you're creating a site for teenagers, it's not the same way you create a site for 60-year-olds. When you talk about 60-year-olds, you have to be careful of the fonts. So tiny fonts and too calligraphic or designing fonts might not be clear to them. So who are you trying to reach, right? So it's important that you keep your goals and the target audience at the forefront of your mind when developing the website. I've listed some questions that you should ask in developing your plan that can help. The first question is, what is the goal of your website? Who is your audience and what do you want them to do on your website? You also want to know what type of website are you building. Is it just a basic information website or an online store? Remember, someone just comes to you and say, I want to build a website. And the next you say, okay, yes, let's start. Give me your domain name. No, you want to know what you want to achieve with the website. It will determine the resources or what you need to do to actually build the website. You also want to know what content are you aiming to publish and at what volume, right? It's important to know that beforehand. So if you're doing an e-commerce site that is maybe a marketplace, you're going to have so many images, so many videos and all of that. You can't use maybe a basic hosting of just 200 gig. That site is going to be crashing. So if you have not thought about that before you go and buy the hosting and domain, you find yourself having issues and you have to upgrade and you might not be able to upgrade and you're having all those kind of issues. So you want to start with the end in mind. You also want to know what is the purpose of this website or the purpose of the content. You want to know how will you structure the website for a best navigational experience. How many pages will be on the menu? Are there going to be sub menus? How is the footer going to look like? Are there going to be redirectional links there or is just going to be plain? Then, in deciding all of this, you also want to know what is the budget? What is the budget of the client? Because people can have very fantastic, big, robust idea, but then they have a shrink pocket and they cannot afford it. Because as we're going to see later on, there are some plugins, there are some things that you're going to buy that you're going to need for the website. That if you do not, if they don't have the budget, there's nothing you can do to help them. So answering these questions usually require you may be interfacing with not just the marketing and the financial things, but the owner of the brand and so many other people determine the priorities and make informed decisions. So when you know all of this, it helps you know, okay, which is more important. Okay, you cannot afford this down now. Why don't you do this? And then we can now step up at so time. Do you understand? Now, the next step in the web development process is create a sitemap. This is my favorite part of a website process. I call it the drawing the pattern, right? Once you've come up with your general goals and you can now start planning how the actual layout of the website could be. And for me, the best place thing I love to use to do it is using a pen and paper, right? So it's here you begin to plan out all the different sections and pages that will make up your site. Okay, when they go to homepage, from homepage you should redirect them to donate button or to the about page, or it's just going to be a one pager that each section will intersect, right? So you can make a site map online or you can use a pen and paper. I love to use a pen and paper. In creating a sitemap, you're basically trying to visualize how the pages on your site will be organized and how they'll be interconnected. And this is very key to creating an effective navigation setup of your site. This is what some people call UI UX for some people. So you do the plan, the mapping, right, the site map, and then the client approves, and then you develop. You can also do that even if you're not coding. Get a pen and paper and draw it and explain. And if the client says fine, go on with it. You don't want to build and pull down eventually. Now, there are a few questions to ask yourself when planning your site. What individual pages do you want? What content will be on those pages? How will you organize the pages into categories? Will they even be in categories? What is going to be the hierarchy of the pages of the site? How will the pages link together? What pages and categories are essential to your site user experience? You also want to know which pages or categories should be removed or combined or should be subset of each other. So it's very important that you consult the person you're developing the website for and work with them in creating this. You don't want to do a fantastic job and then it's eventually rejected. The third step is to purchase a domain name. Now you know what you want to develop. You have an idea of everything. You now know, okay, this is what is appropriate. So your domain name is basically your site URL. For a business website is important, or the best approach is to use a business name as your domain name, right? So you can search on websites, like you can get a domain name from so many places. There's GoDaddy, Namecheap, SiteGround, and all of that. Google Host for those in Nigeria that might have issues with their card with external websites. To see if your domain name, first you will search to see if your domain name is available. Now, sometimes the domain name might not be available. You might need to tweak and adjust the name to find something available. From there, you will now need to choose a website host. So if you check, maybe excellencejoshua.com is not available, you can say, okay, let me do excellencejoshua.net or excellencejoshua.biz. There are different domain hosts or domain, yeah, domain hosts, not hosting now, but domain hosts. When I come at domain host, I'm talking about like .com, .net, .org. .com is more like .company. It's used more by businesses. However, businesses in the tech sector like to use .net technology. They use .net most times. Then businesses that are powered by AI like to use I think .ai or something, or .io, or sorry, cloud is .io or yeah, a bit .oi. Then organizations, non-profits, most non-profits use .org, organization, that .org for non-profit. So you need to know that. But it's also important that when creating a domain name, try to make it clearly associated with your brand. Keep it short if possible. Longer domain names are harder for users to remember. So if you like to use a website builder like WordPress, you can actually register your domain name there or whatever. So get your domain name. Now, when you have got your domain name, like I said, you now have to get a website host. So you now have a domain name. So it's more like you buy a land. The address of the land, let's say the address of the land is number one Hadija Close, Sun City, Abuja. That is your domain name. That is your domain name. It's just floating. It's in Abuja. But when you now go and you have a land, a piece of land where you can build a house, you see the land, like that physical structure. That's what is called the hosting. So it gives tangibility to your domain name. The host gives tangibility to your domain name. So that number one, that land, if you bring it to that land, I said this land is number one Hadija Close or whatever it is. That is your host. That is your website host. So your website host, it's the one you purchase dependent on what, like I said, the goal of your website or the kind of the storage and the weight and what is going to carry and the functionality. You don't want it to come down. So wherever you're buying your domain name, you can buy your host there. Alternatively, you can buy a domain name from one platform and use another host platform. To use another host platform when you buy the to use another host platform when you buy the domain name, you have to put the name servers of the hosting platform on the domain name. That is advanced for this class, but if you go when you go deeper, you understand that. The fourth process is to build your back end. As soon as you know the layout of your website, you can now begin coding. You can now begin coding. That's if you're going to use code. If you're going to use code or you're going to code your website, the first thing is the back end before the front end. But as we noted earlier, you can choose to use a content management system like WordPress to do this, like we're going to be seeing later on in the practical. But if so, you can use, even with WordPress, you can use pre-existing building blocks or even templates to create the site, as we're going to see that we're going to be using Elementor later. But bear in mind that your website won't be as unique as it would if you built it from scratch. When you build it from scratch, you put whatever you want to. It's more flexible than when you're working with pre-built templates and you're trying to modify it to suit what is there. But whatever you do, don't just grab a template and change the words on the plate on the page. Templates should actually serve as a starting point. So you want to modify them. You want to be creative and modify them into something new and original to help you create a unique design. However, if you decide to hand code, you likely find yourself using programming language like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and all of that. All three of these programs will enable you build a website out of code, with the HTML forming the building blocks and CSS and JavaScript enhancing the basic code of what you have with the HTML. Once you have your initial coding is done, you might want to start optimizing the elements of your back end, which includes like deciding where you want to host the site and how it will be organized and how to retrieve data. That's if you're using the coding one. However, if you're using the WordPress and the customization and the theme, you have to buy the domain and the hosting before you start building. Now, the process of backend optimization is detailed and can be very technical. Some things you're expected to do there is set up forms, store images, set up cookies on specific pages, and so much more. So much of those things like that. But it's very important, a very important step in the development process. And if users can make purchases on your site, the data that they enter there has to be stored. So if I'm going to buy something, you want to be able to see what I've ordered. You want to see where my address, where you're going to ship, and all of that. So these things are key or critical in the web development process. Now, when you've done the back end, the next thing is the front end. It's just natural to move to the front end. It's that part of the site where we see when we visit. So it's those front things, the headings, the colors, and all of that. So if you're using, like I said, if you're using a content management system, you might not need to go through all of these things. You but just you might all you need to do might just be to customize the front end, right? You must not put code and all of that. However, if you're doing front end, back end, you have to choose your color scheme, your font type, and all of those things. Then finally, you launch your website. So when all of these have been completed, all you need to do now is to launch your website. Now, you might also want to run some tests to verify that everything is working on it. And once you're sure everything is in order, you can actually make it public. And once you make it public, there will always be modifications and management things you can optimize and change from time to time. Now, in creating your own website, it might seem overwhelming. Like I've explained, you might be wondering what am I saying back end, HTML codes, CSS and all of that. And you're in this class because you feel I want to learn how to do this without coding. I don't want the whole technical thing, right? So that's what we're going to be learning in this course: how to create unique and professional looking website for your business, blog, or portfolio using WordPress. So, WordPress is a content management system that allows you to host and build websites. It contains what we call a plugin architecture and template system. So, what you use there is plugins, templates, and theme. So, with those things, you can customize any website to fit your business with your theme, your plugin, and your template, right? When it comes to WordPress, there are two types of WordPress, and you might be wondering, I see WordPress.org and I see WordPress.com. What's the difference? The difference between the both is that one has to do it actually has to do with what the hosting of the website. Like, your host to your own website, when you host your own website or blog on WordPress.org, you're hosting through a third party hosting provider. So if I go to GoDaddy and Namecheap now to use WordPress, and then what I'm going to be using is WordPress.org, right? But if I've downloaded the WordPress software and I bought my domain name on a third party site, and then I'm managing the server on the WordPress site, that's more like WordPress.com. So basically, WordPress.com offers you to host your website for you. You don't have to go to GoDaddy and Namecheap and buy anything or do anything. You just go to wordpress.com, you can get domain there if you want. If you don't want to get it from somewhere else, and then host on wordpress.com, right? Your hosting is WordPress. But on wordpress.org, you just download the plugin. You download the software, and then you can use it on any of the third party hosting providers that you want to use. That's basically what the meaning is. Like, any software or manage any server if you're using wordpress.com, your website URL will look like, let's say, like my website name is excellencejoshua.com. If I'm using wordpress.com, my website will now be excellencejoshua.wordpress.com. It won't be excellencejoshua.com, it will be excellencejoshua.wordpress.com, right? But they actually have options for you to upgrade your account to get a custom domain from a third party provider, and you can have excellencejoshua.com. That's basically what it is. Furthermore, on the differences, WordPress.com or .org is ideal if you want full power customizing and controlling your website. Um, and there is more responsibility when it comes to managing WordPress.org website. You have to purchase and set up your own domain. You have to install plugins. You have to edit the code if it's necessary. You have to manage the secure website security and all of that. And it's actually free, but you have to pay for other plugins or other things that go into the site. However, for WordPress.com, if you're too much of a newbie and you don't want to need to manage so many stuff, all you need to do is just pay for hosting and maybe buy the domain. There are a number of customizations that come with it that can make your website look the way you want. Like I said, WordPress has a free and the paid version, and you can't upload themes or plugins. You just have to use what is there on the WordPress. But I think if you pay for premium upgrades, there are some features that you will have that you might not have on the free plan. Now, we've talked about WordPress, which is basically our content management system on this course. I need us to also understand what a website theme is. A website theme, but you might have been hearing it a while. So, a theme is basically the foundation of the complete design of the website. You've bought the house, the land in number one Hadija Close, and now you have the land, you've cleared the grass, you can see the tangible land. Your team is like laying the foundation for the house, right? So it's the foundation for the complete design of the website. It determines the typography, the color palettes, the headers, the footers. You can think of it like more like the foundation will determine how many rooms it will have. It will determine if it's going to be a bungalow or a duplex or all of that, right? So that's basically what the team it puts the restrictions or the limits to how far you can go with the website. There are many ways to pick a team, and there are so many platforms that sell theme. On WordPress you see themes. If you also check for paid themes on Team Forest and so many places, you will see different themes, very beautiful looking. The question might be one is, what do I need to know before I pick? How should I know that this team is good and this team will not embarrass me someday? For me, there are 5 steps that are important for you to learn. The first is called, I use the KISS acronym for it. So it means keep it simple, stupid. So stupid not mean, doesn't mean you're stupid, more like it's a no-brainer. So websites that are too busy can kind of take users away from the desired call to action and can be a headache to navigate. So keep it simple. Then you want to ensure that the team supports availability. You need to be sure that the team has been there for a while and they are constantly updating it. So if you check, you see last updated 2 weeks ago, last updated 3 weeks ago, last updated a day ago. It actually indicates that the developer is constantly making changes to make the team better. But if you see last updated 1 year ago, please run away, because WordPress itself is constantly upgrading. So if they're not updating their website to suit, you might find out that it might be breaking some features or some codes on the website and it will affect your website eventually. You also want to pay attention to mobile readiness. So look for a team that is extremely adaptive and built with converting visitors in mind, actually on the phone. Most people will view your website on their phone. So you need to ensure that it's mobile ready. Then you also want to be sure the plugins and applications or extensions that are compatible with the team. There are plenty of plugins that can help you implement and manage so many things, right? But you want to be sure it's compatible. When you are developing your goals and the sitemap of the website, you will know the plugins that you need for different functionalities. So it's very important that you know that your team is actually going to support that, and you don't have to go and start trying to edit code or stuff to actually do that. Then you want to be sure it has cross-browser compatibility. When I started building websites initially, I had an issue. I built a website and it was opening on on Chrome browser, but was not opening on Safari or Firefox, right? So you want to test to ensure that your team, or you want to be sure that your team is it's actually compatible, cross-browser compatible with different websites. These are the 5 steps, key steps that I believe that are key or important when choosing your team. Another thing you want to look at is the reviews. Look at the reviews, look at the feedbacks. I'm going to show you in the practical section how to look at those things. So look at the reviews and see what people are saying, and it could help you further. Now, finally, or almost finally in this theoretical session, we're going to be looking at Elementor. Elementor is a website builder, very amazing. It's a plugin that you can use to customize beautiful websites, and it's what we're going to be using in our tutorial. And so I need you to understand what Elementor is. It's basically a drag and drop editor. It lets you create beautiful WordPress website. But for me, it's not just that it helps you create this beautiful WordPress website, is that it is easy and you can do it in the quickest way possible, right? Using WordPress. WordPress by itself, or the WordPress editor, does not offer so many design options. So Elementor fixes it by giving you, so you just drag and drag the button, drop here, edit it, drag this, drop here, edit it. You have so many countless design options. Now, there are other similar editors that do what Elementor does, like what we call WP Bakery. WP Bakery, there's Gutenberg. Those are different ones that can also do the editor. But Elementor has been proven to be the simplest and easiest to use. So you want to join me to actually figure how this works, and I think it's a very interesting one. And when you're choosing your team, if you're using Elementor to build, you want to be sure that your team is compatible with Elementor or uses Elementor. Not all things use Elementor. Some might use WP Bakery, some might use Gutenberg, or some there are just so many other ones that you can use. But you want to be sure it's compatible with Elementor. The beautiful thing is that the core Elementor plugin is 100% free and is available on the WordPress.org plugin template. However, if you want to add more features, advanced features, capabilities, you can extend the free core plugin by purchasing the Elementor Pro. It can go for as low as $49 for one site. But if you're a web developer and you're doing so many sites, you might want to buy maybe one that you can have up to 25 sites or something, and then whichever site you're using, you just share it for them, right? Because with just the free Elementor, you can actually get started. There's a lot you can do with just the free Elementor. But like I said, the Elementor Pro just builds on this feature to create more functionalities, more features that you won't get on the free plan, right? So with the Elementor Team Builder, you're able to design your entire team using the Elementor interface, including the header, the footer, blog templates. Like with a blank canvas, you will design something exceptional with the Elementor. You can even create global settings instead of using your team settings. You can use the Elementor to create global settings. Now, if you have a team that does not support Elementor, you can actually blank it out and just have the team there, because you can't continue without having a team. So have the team, but then use the Elementor canvas to create global setting. Elementor also works with WooCommerce and gives you amazing flexibility and functionality. So in subsequently in this course, I'll be teaching you practical steps to develop a website using WordPress and Elementor. Um, the domain name and hosting I'm going to be using is going to be purchased from Namecheap. You're going to be seeing a tutorial just after this. And the website I'm going to be developing is for a church, a simple, not a church, but a religious organization, a simple website for religious organization. And I hope you're able to learn as much as you can. But trust me, in website development, it's all about your creativity. You might not get everything on one go, but when you become creative, or you open your creative mind and the creative juices begin to pour out, you begin to see fantastic results. So let us get practical. Thank you for watching and listening.